This is Daily Blast Live. We're talking about what you're talking about. Real, honest, entertaining, live. DBL starts right now.
3, 2.
Welcome to DBL. I'm Sam here with Erica, Jeff, and Alan. Today we're going to change things up a bit on DBL. We're going to take a look back at some of our biggest conversations from this summer. One of the things that really got us going was a post by Chrissy Teigen where she talked about being depressed after getting canceled, saying, quote, "It just sucks." Take a listen. Listen, I used to be a huge Chrissy Teigen fan. My heart breaks for her about losing her child. I can't even imagine what she must be going through. So for me, I just have to compartmentalize everything. Now with the designer, Michael Costello, the allegations against him, he seems like a really horrible racist person, the allegations that we know of. But we forget about a lot of her victims. We hear about the Lindsay Lohans, the Demi Lovato's, the Courtney Stodens. There were people out there were just 13, 14, 15-year-old girls that had no resources, no fan bases, that were bullied by her. And then there was also the young actress, if we have a photo of her at 9 years old, she was the youngest actress to be nominated for an Academy Award, Quvenzhané Wallis. She said Chrissy Teigen said the most horrific things about this young queen that she ended up deleting those, but they resurfaced a couple years after when everything came out. So yes, Chrissy's gone through a lot, but you do have to suffer the consequences to how you treat these young girls.
She called it out herself when she goes, "Yeah, this might sound whiny. You kind of do, boo."
How about having sit-downs with Quvenzhané
But people
Wallis,
don't do
with bullying young
with
girls.
Monica Lewinsky's bullying
You guys are
campaigns.
missing the point that people don't do sit-downs. People don't go outside. We are of a different generation where our parents literally told us, go outside. We went out and
Dude, they're not robots. They're still humans.
When a lot of people, most of us met our spouse or our person, we met them in real time, in real life. We didn't meet them online through Tinder.
But she knows how to go. But Al,
we experienced life before the internet.
she knows how to go outside and have a conversation.
Clearly, she doesn't.
Yeah, a lot of people forgot about Quvenzhané, and that still makes me so sad. Nobody mentioned her. Nobody. I just happened to stumble upon an article and read the exact tweets that Chrissy wrote to Quvenzhané, who did nothing. Literally, she accepted an award, and then it was the most horrific things about her and people making fun of this 9-year-old, and wow.
Yeah, I don't know where to stand on her, because I don't think people should be canceled forever. I think
agree.
there's nuance to everything. I hope she can rebound. I don't think she needs to be taken away from the world forever. But that being said, guys, before we became sparkling daytime TV show hosts, you see before you, we all worked some odd jobs, and one of the odd jobs that Sam had was at the BET Awards, where she shared just an so fascinating story with us. Check it out.
I used to work the BET Awards a long time ago. One of my first jobs, I worked in the garage, handing out credentials.
Wow, name dropper. That's great.
It was one of my first jobs at 22 years old, and despite the car fumes, it was quite exciting to meet a lot of the celebrities, because a lot of the celebrities would get dropped off in that garage in Hollywood and Highland. They'd get dropped off in their limo. The Game, I got to meet Missy Elliott, all these people, and I would hand their team members their credentials.
Yes,
but then
parking valet, we got it.
No, I wasn't parking valet, I was credentials.
Okay.
22. I was putting ceramic tiles when I was 12.
That wasn't my first job. My first job was 14 at Jamba Juice, but back then it was called Juice Club. But it was one of my first jobs in Hollywood, I should say.
Can we get back to the parking valet story? Because I didn't know we were going to go to the juicery.
After passing out the credentials at the BET Awards, I got to go enjoy the show. And let me tell you, the show was absolutely, when you unpack it, there was always substance there. So just want to offer that little anecdote.
But then the Game was ready to go and you had to go get his car.
Oh, the Game was so beautiful and so kind. Oh my goodness, that was definitely a highlight.
Good tipper?
I didn't get tips because I was hired as the person handing out credentials. All right.
Sounds like you were the valet.
I would have loved to have been the valet. Nothing was beneath me. I was a busser. I was a okay, they said, well, we have to go. So don't
I mean, that was more the viewing audience saying that.
Don't shame on valet. That's, you owe the audience an apology. Hey, it was a job with a perk. Don't you love a good perk with a job?
Well, it's also like when it's the first time for anything, we all remember like just being in the presence of like true greatness for the first time. And you tell these stories because you're so excited and geeked about it.
Right.
And you should be. I think that's a part of the whole thing.
Ballets have the best
Don't act
stories.
like you're so cool.
Thank you. I still remember Ludacris after he came off stage coming by me and I yelled, Luda! And then I was so embarrassed.
Well, we talk about a lot of things on this show. And one of the things that really blew me away besides Luda was a story about people's very long and specific orders at Starbucks. They get a little bananas. Take a look. These are people who have no friends. And then their only socialization is just going to Starbucks and making these ridiculous orders.
Or they're just really fine-tuning what they like.
No friends.
Because that wasn't your order before Starbucks allowed you to do that. Nobody
mean?
ever did that at a diner. You know, like that was just something. It's like, oh, I can do that. It's kind of.
It's excessive.
We've all waited tables. I think that we have had people that are like, I want the lemon on the side, the garnish at the top of the plate, ketchup in a cup, and so I think we know these people, but in the food setting.
Yeah, this is the person that wears a fake Ace bandage on their wrist. So they're like, what happened to your wrist? Oh, you'll
That's
never
not
believe what
true.
happened. I get 6 pumps of whatever.
Tori, go ahead.
No, I just wondered, is there anything to being, I think people in this day and age really like very personalized orders. I think they like the ability to masterfully find and fine-tune their order because everything is now accessible that way, and I think it's like a new trend. Is that not fair?
No,
Tori,
I
did
think
you
these
ever
people
wear a
just
fake
have no
Ace
friends.
bandage so someone asks you what happened?
No.
No, she would never. I will say, listen, I used to be quite extensive with my Starbucks order before I had kids. Now that I have kids, I just don't have time. I'm like, whatever, give me a shot of espresso. I just want the energy. But I remember even being embarrassed asking for that order.
You should be.
I wanted to punch myself in the face every time I said it out loud. I swear to God, I was so embarrassed, but
Now
I was
I gotta
very
hear it.
fine-tuned into
What was
what
it?
I want. It was not nearly as bad.
I know, but go for it.
It was a go for it. It was a matcha extra hot grande latte with soy milk, and then half of.
What do you mean extra hot? You have to put it back in the
gosh.
microwave?
I didn't like saying it either. You don't have to say, oh my gosh. I didn't like saying it either. I was a quarter of the way to my order, by the way.
Finish it.
Yeah.
Yes, do it.
A grande, I don't do it anymore. Grande matcha, extra hot latte, half the matcha powder, no sweetener, and extra foam. And it tasted like a marshmallow. You would have loved it. All right.
Al, you missed that story.
Oh yeah, Sam's order. Does it every time.
Coming up on DBL, Fran Drescher is
Yay.
here, and she spills all the juicy details on the Nanny reboot. Plus, it's a fan favorite edition of True Crime Chronicles. We take you inside Colorado's Supermax prison that's home to some of the country's most notorious criminals.
Close.
What's up, DBL Nation? Al Jackson here. I'm the host that brings a little bit of levity to the panel. Let's be honest, things get a little serious. Sometimes you gotta break that up with a little humor. That's where I come in. Why can't you be an adult and be uncomfortable for a few hours? It's all right. Something viewers might not know about me, I have a degree in biology. I know, it's weird. I wasted my money. And then I decided to go to graduate school for biomedical sciences. So that happened. The co-host that makes me laugh the hardest is Tori. She's one of a kind.
I'm just saying anything is possible if you trout yourself.
The co-host that irritates me easily is Tori. She's one of a kind.
Tori, does that taste like a neighborhood you've never been to?
Oh my God!
DBL is bold. DBL is unfiltered. DBL is uncensored. DBL is slightly censored.
Welcome back to DBL. One of our favorite interviews from this past summer was with Fran Drescher, you know, from the iconic show The Nanny. Earlier, we caught up with her in this encore edition of Chatting with the Stars.
So, what's the green stuff?
It's wasabi. It's like mustard. Gives it a real kick.
Ooh, I love mustard.
Gee, you know that mustard really clears up the nasal passage.
Oh my gosh, welcome back to DBL. That was the iconic Fran Drescher in her equally as iconic role as Fran Fine in The Nanny. There she is joining us here today. Welcome, Fran.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Terrific.
I remember that scene so vividly, watching it with my parents who are huge fans of yours. And my dad had a thing with wasabi. He would always give wasabi to my older sister's boyfriends as like a trick to see how much they would cry. I know. So when you had the wasabi, my dad was like, I wonder what's going to happen to Fran.
What is it with dads and their humor? I don't get it.
I know, and I would have to say that literally I think it was the funniest scene of the series, and it's actually been compared, Fran, to the famous conveyor belt at the chocolate factory scene with Lucille Ball. So tell us, how did you get through that scene?
Well, you know, we did a lot of physical comedy on that show. Once we started, it became something that was anticipated in every episode. And we always had a good time inventing it, rehearsing it, and then ultimately doing it for the live audience.
I remember that episode because I watched religiously. And you know, the thing about Fran, the thing about it is I was one of those kids, and I'm sure all of my co-hosts will be like, what? I was always, quote, doing too much. I was flamboyant. I always had a lot to say. And you gave me license to feel like that was okay. So I just want to thank you through your character, through who you are.
Similar color now.
Yes, it's just kismic. So, okay, of course, Fran Fine's style and of course her voice are one of a kind. But is it true that you'd pick Cardi B to play Fran in the TV reboot?
Ooh, I love Cardi B, and I think she's very funny, and she has a funny voice too. So, you know, as we started to think, well, if we ever do a reboot, do we want to, you know, use the same actors, or do we want to just do a whole new cast and bring it into the moment? And so that hasn't really been decided. Actually, we're writing the Nanny musical right now for Broadway, and we got Rachel Bloom from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend writing all the lyrics, and she's brilliant, a real phenom. And so we're very excited about that. And we think that within the next 2 years, we should be opening with that.
Now, you have to explain how this is happening, because this is kind of crazy for a lot of people that do work with their spouse. But you and your ex-husband, Peter Mark Jacobson, still work together, and you're still best friends. And I think that's really cool. But some people might not know that he's now come out as gay after the divorce. It's Pride Month now. So what does Pride mean to you?
I lovingly regard him as my gay ex-husband.
Yeah.
In my stand-up act, I talk about that a lot. But, you know, just yesterday, I worked all day. I had to do a lot of press because we're promoting the Fran Jam for Cancer Schmanza, which is this Sunday, Father's Day. I feel so blessed that I have somebody that worries about me. And it's probably why we're both still single, because who can compete with the history and love that we share for each other?
I love it.
Attention.
Nation, I'm Lindsay Granger. I'm a trained journalist. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I learned to extensively research. I've written a documentary. I describe myself as the host that will bring a fresh perspective to the panel. I think Tori and I might disagree.
Not a nice thing for the president to say.
Everyone's blowing out of proportion. But that's okay, because today we need that. DBL is a creative, fun, and fast-paced type of show. Who wouldn't want to be at DBL? I'm looking forward to joining the panel and getting into some fun, interesting, and intense conversations. But it's important today. We need to agree to disagree and have the dialogue. A lot of people watch TV and say, how am I represented? DBL is the answer to that question. I'm Lindsay Granger, and I hope to be your voice.
Welcome back to DBL. If you didn't know, one of the most secure prisons in America is right here in Colorado. It's a Supermax prison, and it houses some of the most notorious criminals in the country. We've got the inside take in this fan-favorite edition of True Crime Chronicles.
Lingering in the shadows of Colorado's Rocky Mountains lies the country's only federal Supermax prison. ADX Florence is closed off to the rest of the world. On the outside, armed security guards, gun towers, and cameras. On the inside, pure isolation. Inmates spend an average of 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell with a bed, desk, toilet, sink, and shower. Meals are slid through a small hole in the door. The only glimpse of the outside world is a tiny window. This prison was specifically designed to keep every inmate in solitary confinement. No one has escaped since it opened in 1994. The Supermax incarcerates criminals deemed too dangerous for the average prison, like the notorious drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who was transferred in July after escaping 2 prisons in Mexico. Boston Marathon bomber Johar Tsarnaev, Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, and Oklahoma City bomber Terry Nichols are also incarcerated here. Of the 400 inmates, 1 was considered the most dangerous. Terrible Tommy Silverstein. He killed 3 inmates and a prison guard in jail before being transferred to the Supermax. Tommy spent more than 3 decades in solitary confinement before dying this year. The few who have been inside and made it out call the Supermax life after death. Others say it's a clean version of hell.
Wow. We are joined now by Alan Prendergast, a senior reporter at Westward Magazine in Denver. Thank you for joining us. I can't imagine even stepping foot in that facility. Now, you've spent the past 30 years writing on high security prisons and historic crimes, and you were also one of the last reporters allowed at this Supermax prison. So everyone wants to know, what was it like inside? What's a typical day like? Please tell us.
It's a very disorienting experience. You go through a maze of locks, doors, sally ports, surveillance. The staff are in these control rooms with these panels of lights, sort of like the Starship Enterprise, and they're controlling remotely what's going on and intensely monitoring what is happening with the inmates, who are mostly just in their cells.
They never interact, ever. These would Ted Kaczynski interact with El Chapo ever?
The only way that would probably happen is during a recreation period, if they were both in different cages on the yard.
Near each other.
But most of the real high-profile ones tend to be even more isolated, so that they may not be allowed on the yard. Someone like Silverstein wouldn't have been allowed on the yard with other inmates. He would have been alone doing that. So,
chilling.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, you've written a lot about isolation cells, and I actually read an article that said that because they've been in there for 23 hours a day, they start to see things. And you've, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You said that it's almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Torture. Do you think that this would kind of violate our United States anti-torture laws because of like what they're being subjected to, even though there are despicable people?
Right. Well, there is a serious issue there. International rights organizations do consider that degree of isolation to be torture. I mean, it is debilitating. We have studies that show people that are isolated like that, they become very sensitive to noise and light. They sometimes become paranoid. They do hallucinate sometimes. If they already have some mental illness, and a lot of inmates do, it can be exacerbated by that. There are instances of suicide, mutilation, things like that. And yes, it's a problem because on one hand, we do want to keep these people isolated because they are extremely dangerous, some of them. But at what point does that become not a good thing? I mean, at state level, a lot of prisons are rethinking solitary because if these people are going to get out someday, they've been very damaged by this. And some people in ADX, the Supermax, do get released at some point down the line. So you have to think about that in terms of public safety as well as whether you're being humane.
We just learned about terrible Tommy Silverstein, which a lot of people might not know about, and you wrote back and forth with him. You never interviewed him in person. Did he ever have any regrets at the end of his life? He just passed away this past year, I believe. Yeah,
he did. He was actually a very interesting guy. I mean, he's one of the reasons ADX was built, because these murders took place at another high security prison, but the security wasn't adequate enough to keep him further isolated. He particularly regretted he murdered a correctional officer at that prison. And over the years, he did really have, I think, a change of heart about some of the things that he did when he was an Aryan Brotherhood leader and thought was following the convict code about these things. But yes, he was
back and forth with him.
Oh yes, we corresponded for years. He was a very thoughtful guy. I mean, he had done a lot of thinking and a lot of contemplation over the years. He was probably the most isolated prisoner in America for much of his career. And if you want to talk about torture, he was certainly in position to do that. But he didn't seem to lose his marbles when he was in there.
Unbelievable.
I just have a quick thing,
please,
because we interview some of these people and kind of give them a voice, I'd rather give someone like that a voice to say, I was president of the Aryan Brotherhood. It's not worth going down this path. I have regrets. My life's almost coming to an end. I'd rather have those type of things get out there than, why did you do this? And let me get into your mind a little bit more and almost push them up.
You want people to learn from
I'd rather you get those letters that he wrote to you at the end of his life out there.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, there are all kinds of people in these places, and some of them are, by any social standards, really bad people. But I think you can learn a lot from people who have been through some of these experiences. Sometimes they've had an opportunity to look at a side of life that most of us just don't experience.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much, Alan, for being here. You can read Alan's reporting on high-profile crimes and prisons at westword.com.
Promotional consideration is brought to you by
DBL Nation, I'm Brandon London. I told my mom at a young age I wanted to play professional football, and she said, show me. So I worked my tail off. I would describe myself as the host that brings energy to the panel. Are you not entertained? My perspective doesn't really come from a book. It comes from different experiences. This is that social injustice that Colin Kaepernick took a knee for. The co-host that makes me most hopeful is hands down my big sister, Erica Cobb. She just makes me better as a person. Not only on camera, but off camera. Don't show her that. DBL is raw, DBL is live, DBL is opinionated, and DBL is what you should be watching.
Welcome back to DBL. We love hearing from our DBL Nation. And now we have a question for Erica. You ready, Erica? Okay, so Dorothy asks Erica, what's your favorite thing to do to treat yourself?
Well, thank you, Dorothy. I like to treat myself. No, it's really, it's going on vacation. And that's like when I break, like I'm not doing anything break.
No phone?
And I think that's the way to treat yourself.
What are you getting done today, though, to treat yourself?
I am doing a lymphatic massage.
Ooh.
I'm hoping that it reduces the stress in my face. I see, y'all don't even need Botox. I just get so stressed, I'm like,
Erica never need Botox.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah, she just got them jeans. I know you get one. Getting a little old.
You get Botox.
I know, but you could have said, I don't need it. that was your cue.
DBL's new every day. We'll see you again.